Good day, Mission Possible podcast community. I'm your host, Doug Dvorak, and I'm so very excited to bring you inspiring stories from incredible guests. These individuals are on a mission to create remarkable possibilities that not only enhance their own lives, but also make a lasting impact on the communities and individuals around them that they serve. Stay tuned for some truly amazing conversations. My guest today is Executive Chef Steve Topple. Hi, Steve.
Hi, how are you?
I'm excellent. I've been put on the Chef Topple 5 since you got here. Your food is so darn good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really excited about today's conversation. Steve hails from Portsmouth, United Kingdom, a naval and fishing port on the south coast of England. For over 2 decades, Steve has been perfecting his craft in culinary arts by working in a variety of top-tier resort kitchens. He's worked in such cities as San Francisco, Sea Island, Georgia, Lake Placid, New York, McCall, Idaho, Vail, Colorado, Loch Lomond, Scotland, and numerous other restaurants in London, England, and has prepared himself well to open several restaurants in and around the areas he's worked, but specifically here in Valley County. You've got a couple restaurants. You're also the executive chef and head chef here at Tamarack Resort. Steve has received several prestigious awards over the course of his illustrious career, including Young Chef of the Year Award from Nestle Food Service. He's also been featured as a keynote speaker at many events all over the world, including the Best of Rock Resorts and Chefs and Champagne, and has authored 2 culinary books, So You Want to Impress and Signatures. Chef Steve Topple, welcome to the Mission Possible podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My
Super
pleasure.
excited to be here.
Excellent. Chef, can you share your journey into the culinary world? What inspired you to become a chef?
Yes, so gosh, so I'm originally from Portsmouth, United Kingdom, and I went to culinary school there for about 3 years. There's a college called Highbury College, and it was a 3-year program. The first year was kind of like a basic culinary education, like learning how to do nice knife skills, how to work in a kitchen. The second year was more advanced. We actually had to do some serving as well as like a restaurant. We actually had an open restaurant to the public there, which was absolutely amazing as part of the education. So we had a real restaurant open to the public. People came in and ordered food. We ran it like a proper brigade. And then the third year was kind of a specialized, I specialized in advanced culinary and learned more fine dining techniques. And, I wanted to get into the fine dining kind of world. It's a long story, actually. I originally wanted to be a pilot, a commercial
Really?
pilot. Yes, yeah, and so I actually had about 15, 16 flying lessons, like in Cessnas and stuff like that, and I went for my medical to get my pilot's license, and I found out I was slightly colorblind, red-green colorblind, and you have to take the test of all the dots, and you have to find a number or letters in the dots and stuff like that, and I was having a real hard time with that, and the doctor was like, oh my gosh, yeah, this seems like you're struggling, and so he said that, if your dream's to be a commercial pilot, a lot of the UK-based airlines like British Airways and Virgin, those companies tend to be very strict on their qualifications to become a pilot. And so I wasn't devastated. It was definitely a dream of mine. As a young boy, I used to go up to Heathrow Airport in London a lot, and I would always watch these big American jets taking off, going, American Airlines and United and stuff like that, flying off to the US. And I was like, one day, And so anyway, I loved cooking. My aunt is a chef as well, and so it's in the family. I used to cook with my parents in the kitchen, and so it was always kind of a natural progression. So when I was leaving high school, I went to a job recruitment fair, and really enjoyed going to restaurants and stuff like that. So I decided, I was like, well, I could be a chef. I could make this go. And so because we finished school at 16 in the UK, so I decided to go to culinary school, go to college, and learn the trade from there. So 3 years of that was amazing. Then I was just so passionate about cooking and love everything to do with food. I always used to watch TV shows in the UK, and then I said to myself, I was like, well, I need to go to London. I need to broaden my horizons. So I went to London and worked for a TV chef in London called Brian Turner, and he's a celebrity chef in the UK. I used to look up to him all the time, and he was on all sorts of cooking, competitions, and he was also a regular guest on live TV in the morning. So it was kind of like somebody I looked up to, and it's like, oh, so I applied to his restaurant. He was hiring an apprentice cook, and so I actually worked for him for almost a year and a half. Wow, was that an interesting time? I used to go in the morning at 9 o'clock and leave at midnight, and
Wow.
I had to run literally every night to go get the last tube train in London, the underground system there, and it was at like at 12 o'clock, and I had to make it by 12:15 to go run that. If not, you have to use the night bus system in London, and it's if anybody's ever familiar with that, it's a real interesting experience. But so working in London, would take an hour break in between and go sit in Hyde Park and Green Park, and just enjoy an hour or two away from the kitchen, kind of like a split shift kind of type deal. So I really kind of learned long hours it's not that big of a deal. It's really easy for me to do.
Because you're so passionate about it.
Exactly, absolutely. And then I went to Scotland and worked in Loch Lomond, as you mentioned, and it was an amazing property. It was a Cameron House was the name of the hotel, and I worked at a Michelin-star restaurant, and it was my very first experience working at a Michelin restaurant, and it was really tough for sure. The chefs were really adamant about wanting to do the highest quality, always trying to push. We only had one Michelin star, which is an amazing achievement, but the maximum you can get is 3 Michelin stars, and so they were always trying to push for the second star. You never know when that inspector's going to come in, who could be a Michelin inspector, and we always wanted to get that second star. I think it was always an ultimate goal. So I was there for about a year and a half. I kind of loved, Scotland. It's kind of west of Glasgow, so it was away from all the big cities as such. A really small little town of Balloch, and it was just beautiful. Really fun experience. And then, I still always had that inkling to come across the United States for some reason. Like, those afternoons when I was sitting in Hyde Park or Green Park in London, I'd see these big jets again, flying over, going into Heathrow Airport and stuff like that, and you can hear them all the time. And I was like, I still had that passion, so I reached out to a bunch of restaurants. I created letters. I sent them the old school mail, and sent them all across to the US. And one of them responded back to me and said that they were really excited, and that was up in Lake Placid, New York, in the Adirondacks, and kind of maybe where I fell in love with the ski industry and ski resort style towns, very small, very cute style towns, which obviously part of my career has been working in ski resorts and the ski areas and stuff. So really fun. So yeah, Lake Placid was great. It's about 5 hours from New York City. I used to go down to New York and kind of like do stages, as we call them as chefs. Like you try to go to a really fancy restaurant. I went to Le Bernardine in New York, and oh my gosh, one of my favorite restaurants. I love it, and really look up to Eric Ripert as one of my idols. I think I look up to. He's just amazing. Very hands-on. Probably one of the best chefs out there for me. And also went to Danielle, and so I would go down and kind of do this on my own time. You don't get paid for doing these stages. You go in there and just kind of like learn, look around, and open your eyes to such a bigger world. And then from there I went to South Carolina. I was in Aiken, South Carolina, which is kind of a horse town, right on the border with Augusta, Georgia. So obviously the big Masters tournament. So we'd have a big influx every year for the Masters tournament. And then I went to San Francisco. I worked for Wolfgang Puck in San Francisco. Amazing experience. Like, I feel like you have to associate yourself with the best to be the best. Sometimes I think like you have to outsource. So like the chef in London, working for Wolfgang Park, and then working up at a Michelin-star restaurant up in Scotland. I personally really feel like you can learn the best you can from those types of chefs, and so it was a really good experience for me. And then from working in San Francisco, just a really expensive city to live. I couldn't afford to live there. It wasn't a very dog-friendly city, and I'm a big dog person. And so I decided to go to Georgia, to Sea Island, Georgia, which is a beautiful, the Cloister Hotel right there, just below Savannah. And I was at the lodge at Sea Island, which is one of the properties of the Cloister, 5-star, 5-diamond, butler service. It was just absolutely incredible. What an experience. It was just really cool. And then again, I had the inkling of wanting to do travel, see more of the country. Ended up going to Vail, Colorado, and
Beano's. You were at Beano's
Yes.
for a while.
Yeah, Beano's Cabin in Beaver
Yep.
Creek. I was there for 6 years. I loved it. It was actually probably one of my favorite places I've ever been, because it's just such a beautiful place. It's in the meadow. You have to take a snowcat with a sleigh ride behind it, which is really, really unique and experience. And from there, I was there for about 12 years in Vail, worked at the lodge at Vail, Beano's Cabin, and the Sun and Up Hotel, and also Game Creek Club right on top of Vail Mountain. A headhunter got in touch with me, saw my resume, said to me, and said, "Hey, listen, I've got an opportunity in the Pacific Northwest." He didn't really specify where it was. I was thinking, when you think of the Northwest, you think maybe Montana.
You don't think of Valley County.
No. And so, I came out and interviewed at the Shore Lodge in McCall.
Love the Shore Lodge.
Yeah, beautiful property. I was given the opportunity to be the executive chef there, to run the entire property, which was, wow, an amazing experience, and private club with Whitetail Club, being there. So I loved it, and I was there for almost 2.5, 3 years. I always had that dream of wanting to open my own restaurant. I dabbled in it a little bit when I was in Colorado. I opened a soup restaurant. I figured, I was like, oh, that's soup and cold and skiing and stuff like that. It'd be really popular, but it's hard work. Running your own restaurant, for sure. It's running your own business is
Right.
super tough. So I drove by this empty restaurant in Donnelly. It used to be called Buffalo Gal, Gal. Had a really amazing reputation. I explored it more. I was able to get some funding, backing, to help me to buy the restaurant. Ended up buying the restaurant and changed it. There was a lack of Italian restaurants in the region, being such a small area that it's really hard to find ethnic food in this particular region, for sure. So I decided to go for Italian, and with the reputation being great of Buffalo Girl, the Italian translation for Buffalo Girl was Ragazza di Buffalo, and so that's how that was born, and that was my very first baby, as they call them.
And I've eaten there many times, and it was so successful. You opened up, let's say, a sister property before coming to Tamarack. Tell us about that.
Yes, yeah, and that's called Casa Rossa, and it's 100-year-old old schoolhouse. Absolutely amazing. It was in really bad condition when we got it. Basically, the dirt was showing on the bottom of the schoolhouse. The walls were the only thing that was in place. There was no running water, no power, any of that stuff. So we had to we actually picked up the house and moved it closer to the highway so people could see it. And the history of this house is it's actually been moved around in Valley County quite a few times. It's actually been a schoolhouse. They actually kids were taught in there, and it's been in multiple locations, and then it moved to its current location where it's now kind of fixed to an anchor. We did a nice a nice concrete floor basement area, so now it's all kind of stuck down to the ground, which is great, so it's never going to move again.
Beautiful location. I've been and eaten at both of those and really impressed. So you open that up. They're both, I wouldn't say on autopilot, but then you get a call or somebody approaches you from Tamarack Resort. Tell me about that journey.
Yes, absolutely. So the owners of Tamarack came into my restaurants quite a bit, really enjoyed talking with me, explored the opportunity of possibly leasing one of the restaurants up here at Tamarack. But deep down, I think, I was looking for a little bit more of a challenge. As chefs, you always want to challenge yourself. You don't want to be status quo. That's not me. That's not what I want to do. I'm very passionate and goal orientated. And so they said, well, what about the opportunity of you becoming executive chef up at Tamarack? And I was like, wow, that's a huge job. We have 7 restaurants up at Tamarack. There's so many other things to it as well. There's banquets. We have a private club, and so yeah, it's a real challenge for sure. It's amazing. I love it. Love the experience.
Yeah, and I've seen the impact you and your philosophy, your talents, your commitment to excellence. And I'm originally from Chicago, and I'm a foodie. Had the high honor and privilege to eat in the kitchen at Charlie Trotter's like in '88, and this Charlie was on perpetual motion, and they've got a great Netflix special. I believe it's Netflix on Charlie and what happened.
I've actually watched it. I think it was fantastic. And
yeah,
I have a funny story. I actually met Charlie Trotter. And
really, tell us.
I've met lots of celebrity chefs, and throughout my time, and you kind of cross paths, doing food events or stuff like that. But so Charlie Trotter brought his kids out to ski in Beaver Creek. This was at Bino's cabin. It's kind of an embarrassing story. So Charlie was kind of one of the movers behind banning foie gras in Chicago. And I totally had to space that. And he came in for dinner with his son and his son's best friend, and they were skiing in Beaver Creek, and they wanted to come to Bino's. They had heard about it. They didn't order, they only ordered like 2 courses, and I was like, well, that's really odd, because it's like, we have a multiple course menu, so I sent them out a course of foie gras.
No,
as a special course, and I totally forgot about it.
What did he say, or how did he react?
His son loved it and ate it, but he did not eat it because, I don't know if he was being set up or something like that. He felt like he was being set up, but oh my gosh, yeah, it was an amazing experience. He was such a humble guy. We actually exchanged books. You had mentioned in the opening of this, that I created 2 cookbooks. So I was like, I was kind of embarrassed to show him my book, because Charlie Trotter's Charlie Trotter. He's one of the most amazing chefs, and unfortunately he's not around with us anymore. But he's anyway. I gave him a cookbook. I signed it, and then a month later, I received this huge box, and it was he sent me 6 books of his own that were all signed and stuff like that, and just we made that connection, and just it was just an amazing experience and really embarrassing in a way, but pretty good.
That's a great story. I've always loved fine dining, and on occasion I've been to Michelin stars. I've really enjoyed early watching some of these Iron Chef and really when I'm in a great restaurant, be it a Michelin star or not, you really see how important it is for the executive chef and the talents, the commitment to excellence he or she brings, the quality of the staff. And what blew me away was when I read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential.
Yep.
And essentially, you as the executive chef in a restaurant or running food service, restaurant, banquets at Tamarack Resort, you're the CEO. And you established incredible high levels of service excellence. And when we talked initially, beyond everything you have to do to have a great restaurant, a great food, value, great guest or customer experiences, love, and unpack for me, because that really touched me. You said you and your team add love in addition to the best ingredients. Tell us the importance of love in your cooking, management, etc. What is that love philosophy? What love do you bring? And I see the passion you bring, but the quality, every dish I've had from you is out of the park, just incredible.
Yeah, honestly, Doug, I think it starts from, the basics of buying the best product, right? It's like we have to source, finding the best products out there. We don't want to be accepting the general stuff. I think, Tamarack is such an amazing resort. We want to be the best. We want to offer the best food. So I don't want to offer beef that is, a select program, for example, like, we actually want to offer Prime in our steakhouse restaurants. So we have USDA Prime. We actually entered an agreement with Certified Angus Beef, which is a national program. And I actually went out to their facilities in Ohio and actually went through a schooling of Certified Angus Beef. And again, it's one of those things as a chef, like you always want to be the top of what you can be by going to the Certified Angus Beef houses and learning, what it takes to be a Certified Angus cow. Is really, really important, and understanding the basics of that. So back to the original question, like, the love is finding the best products, finding the best staff that will cook and have passion to inspire them to cook and be the best that they possibly can. Like letting your chef de cuisines kind of own their own restaurants, and I'm a great believer in wanting them to succeed and taking them to the next level. Who knows, if I open up another restaurant down the road, then I've got this army of chefs that I can call upon, that will be my chef de cuisines. And I've taught many of chefs back in Vail, Colorado, that have become executive chefs now, that I stay in touch with to this day, and they always reach out to me. Hey chef, how's it going? Wanted to touch base, and so I've got that that love with my employees. I think that's really, really important. The love of food, and for me, if a menu item isn't selling very well, I change it out, rotate the item out, do something fun, new, something exciting. I think my staff will say that I'm always trying to be, maybe I change the menus too much, but it's fun, to be creative and find the best ingredients, and so that's where the love comes from. It's really important to emphasize that with my team, as well as show them that there is a lot of love you can put into food, and you've got to love what you do, and that's what I really enjoy my career.
And obviously you've been doing this for decades, a love and passion for being a chef, and then a love and passion for finding A players, because I ascribe to this when it comes to finding talent. A's hire A's, B's hire C's, and C's put you out of business. So finding those talented A players that are part of your team, sourcing great, organic, the best ingredients, and then really have a passion and love of food and creating that experience for your guests. Steve, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in the early days of your career?
Yeah, definitely. I think trying to establish myself, I think, definitely one of the hardest things to be seen. Like I was always one of those guys that I'm a quiet guy by nature, kind of like shy, but I wanted to be seen by these celebrity chefs. You want to be picked up by them. You want to be taken under their wing as such. And it's just like, I think that was really important to me, was just to be noticed. And I think I certainly got into people's iframe and stuff like that. I think that I was definitely, but I think it's a hard industry for sure. Being a chef, being a cook is really tough.
Nights, weekends, long hours.
Yeah, no life.
Food costs, eggs.
Outrageous.
So trying to do that with a sense of passion, commitment to excellence, and making money.
Yep,
making
exactly.
money. So, Steve, you've worked in some incredible kitchens. What are some standout experiences that shaped you and your approach to the profession of being an executive chef?
Yeah, I think, going back to, working in Scotland at Loch Lomond, at the Cameron House, that was a really eye-opening experience for me, as far as the ultra fine dining kind of Michelin-star restaurant. But I working at another restaurant in London called Grumbles, which is still around to this day, which is amazing. I actually look it up often to make sure and read reviews and see what happens there. But I was actually a server there.
Really?
Yeah. So I was. It was just an amazing experience. It was a really small, cute restaurant, kind of like I think that's where maybe I got the passion for smaller things, like the smaller restaurants can, if you have too big of a dining room, 300 seats, then it's definitely a lot more challenging to control that. I go to Vegas often because like I like to re-energize myself, and I honestly love to see what's happening in Vegas and all the celebrity chefs and what new concepts are coming out, and it really opens my, everybody's like, oh, you just like to go gamble, or you want to go have, and I was like, no, I love Las Vegas because it really, really it does show me, what the industry is doing, and I try to stay up on that and see what Bobby Flay's up to or Gordon Ramsay's up to, and seeing what new places that they're opening up, and it's really inspiring for me. I come back from that and like, and everybody's like, oh no, chef's going to change the menus again. It's just
So it inspires you to see what the best of the best are doing.
Exactly.
So you sort of touched on the next question I'm about to ask you, but who were your biggest culinary influences, and how have they impacted your style in the kitchen?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier Eric Ripert from La Bernardine in New York. Oh my gosh, what an amazing experience! Like I said, he won't know me from anybody, but I went in there, met him, and I was just blown away. Like it's like God to me. Honestly, now seeing these celebrity chefs, and Gordon Ramsay is another chef of mine. I really really look up to because of his dedication to making the very best of excellence. Grant Aschetz in Chicago, Alenia, is another
Yes.
one of my. I love that restaurant. Oh my gosh, like I had to.
What a story from him.
Yeah.
He worked with Charlie,
Yep.
then went out on his own. They had some friction. He got tongue cancer or throat
Right.
cancer,
Yep.
and just an incredible story. What was his name again?
Grant I probably butcher his last name, but it's Grant Aschetz, and just an amazing story. He had tongue cancer, and but he's he's a very powerful chef, and now I think he's got 2 or 3 things going in Chicago, which is great.
Yeah.
But I love, again, it's one of those research things. I said to myself, I'm going to go to Chicago, and I went to Chicago, and kind of like I go there for like 2 or 3 days, and again I'm looking for that inspiration, of like where I can be, or what you can be, that type of thing. I think it's really important. Being a good chef versus being a great chef is a really really, there's a big difference to that. Like if you don't inspire yourself to go out and see what other people are doing, then you're going to be that mediocre, okay chef, right? I want to be a great chef. Like I say, I've touched hands with so many chefs from that have been part of James Beard Foundation. Like they invited me out to New York, and I've done dinners, 2 dinners at the James Beard Foundation
Wow.
house, and looking up at the wall, and knowing the history there of James Beard, and it's just incredible. And we went to the Chefs in Champagne event in the Hamptons in New York, and again it was just a really really amazing experience. And rubbing elbows with Marcus Samuelsson, and it's just a absolutely amazing experience. And the whole team of cast were actually there at that event. Of Chopped, and so it was really nice to rub hands with those guys.
Excellent. So, top of mind, at least in this country, the average American diet is not very healthy. It doesn't use local sourced, farm to table quality ingredients. Some fast food can be good. However, the vast majority of the American diet is not healthy, and it's processed food. In your opinion, Steve, what role does sustainability and sourcing quality ingredients play in your cooking?
Yes, it's a huge. I'm a really, really big fan of supporting local. I think what comes with that is like we have an agreement with a local bison. It's called Shoemaker Bison Ranch, and they're in New Plymouth, Idaho. Absolutely amazing company. They came to me. I was their very first chef to actually put their bison on the menu up in this region, and we still have that relationship to this day. And for me, it's. I think you're right there. Fast food culture is maybe too much here in the United States, and I really think that using fresher ingredients make the difference when it comes to good quality food. The fast food world is there's nothing wrong with it. There's a niche for that, right? Everybody craves a really good burger sometimes, or chicken tenders, or that type of thing. But if you can find a restaurant that offers that just fresher products, I would totally support. Local is the way to go. And again, searching out the best products. Like, you don't want to always go with the generic food companies and what they offer. You want to find local, small companies, because you're supporting that circle in my neighborhood of, like, if you support a local bison company in Idaho, then that money stays within Idaho,
Right.
and so on. And so that's the sustainability of that is really important to me. I wish that we had a better produce selection in the summertime to pick from, and that was more abundant for us to have. I struggle. I'd love to go to the farmers markets, but I can't get to go very often. But maybe I should just have the farmers come and see me directly and just buy it from them, and stuff, instead of having to go to the market and so on. So I would like to explore that a little bit more, for sure.
Yeah, and I've had your bison fillet at the reserve, and it's outstanding. Nice. Steve, the restaurant industry is known for being fast-paced and demanding. How do you manage the stress and maintain a work-life balance when you're putting in 10 to 16 hours a day, nights, weekends? How do you maintain that work-life balance and deal with that level of stress?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. You always have to think to yourself of how you want to plan trips. Like, I've planned a trip to go to Europe in the spring, so I'm super excited about that. I like to research again where I'm going to go. I'm going to Sicily and to Puglia on this trip, so I'm super excited about that, to go keep my Italian kind of learning experience. And I'm actually been connected with some mushroom people in Sicily, and so
you're going to Sicily on mushrooms? Just kidding,
No,
Steve. Little humor there, not
right.
implying.
For sure, but no, it's really again, like, you've got to have inspiration, like going to Las Vegas or going to Chicago or going to Seattle, which I just did recently, and to find other restaurants and see what other chefs are doing. You're not the only chef in this world, and you want to see what other people are doing, and it gives you inspiration, and you need to have that. I do work long days. Luckily, I've got two amazing Springer Spaniel dogs that are my kids, as I call
What are
them.
their names?
Lily and Jack.
Lily and Jack.
Yeah,
cool.
And so they're absolutely amazing, and so I get excited to go see them, and I see how excited they are when I come home. I mean, like, they talk to me, and their bodies just move in. They're so excited, and for me to come home. So I definitely look forward to that moment every day I come home, and I like it. It's a new day. Daddy's home, and for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. You mentioned Sicily. My wife and I did a self-guided biking tour of Sicily about 3 years ago, and we stayed at family-owned B&Bs where they actually had a restaurant, and it was somebody in the family. And the merging of culture, good food, taking time with the best ingredients, recipes that were passed on to generation. It's an event, and it's not rushed, but culturally, the importance of good ingredients, locally sourced, made with love. You can just taste it, and it's not rushed. These were like 2-hour experiences where the pasta was just so fresh, everything, the cheese, and I think some of that is already here in the U.S. and we want more of it. But talk to me about what advice you would have to aspiring chefs who want to make a name for themselves or get into doing what you're doing.
Yes, so we're actually working with a local culinary program here. We're actually trying to create, going back to the original apprenticeship kind of deal. So with the McCall College, I'm actually on the board of directors there, and we are creating a culinary program where they actually can work at Tamarack and then get their education through the McCall College and actually learn some of the basics. So for me, it's so important that we have generations of people coming into the kitchens, because it's been hard the last like five years or so to get people inspired to be cooks. If you have a passion for it, then you're going to go a long way in this industry. Like I said, you want to be inspired by watching, Chopped or, any of the Food Network programs these days and stuff like that. I think it's really important to learn, see what else is happening out in the industry. But we certainly are trying very hard to bring younger generations of cooks on board. And I know Tamarack is a really huge fan of this program, and as is Shore Lodge, which is another local resort here in McCall. And so there's lots of little independent restaurants that would benefit from this program. It's a 2-year program. So they would learn a lot about the industry and then do their college program as well, doing the education side of it. And we were actually going to teach that program. So myself and a couple of other chefs. So I think it's really, really, really important.
So it's a good, honorable profession with a living wage. There is need for professionals at every level in fine dining or in the food industry. And to your illustrious career, if you have talent, hard work, honesty, integrity, and love, it's a long-term career that pays a very livable wage where you can really have a great career and great benefits and a living wage. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think being part of the resort world, as such, like Tamarack Resort and working in Vail and stuff like that, like we have employee housing that we offer to people, which is like such a huge bonus, But within the last 5 years, like me personally at my restaurants in Donnelly and at Tamarack, we've increased that wage from the beginning, like where it was like $12-13 an hour. We're paying people $25 to $30 an hour now in the kitchens, and it's definitely a changed industry. We have to keep up with cutting edge and paying people the right amount of money to do this job. It's not an easy job anymore. So, like I say, we've definitely made that huge increase. And then working for a resort is even better because you get discounted housing as well. So that's kind of great.
And one thing that I was, because I travel quite a bit, and I have for 40 years, and I eat out a lot. And one of the chefs said, if you want to see the cleanliness of the kitchen, go to the bathroom. And I remember how focused you were on a clean bathroom at both of your restaurants here in Donnelly. But there's two things that really are off-putting to me when I go to a great restaurant or even any restaurant. Is the bathroom clean? Because if it isn't, that probably speaks to what the kitchen looks like. And restaurant staff smoking in public where the public can see them. Nothing, I don't smoke, but those are two things: a dirty bathroom and people that are handling my food smoking where I can see it.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree completely. I think those are really important points. I like to emphasize that. I think I think if you, as cooks, I'm really hard on my cooks, making sure that they run clean stations. My health inspections at both my restaurants came in at 100%. I'm really proud of that. The fact of, when I go home, I always do my dishes before I go to bed and put them in the dishwasher and, clean up so I have an empty sink, and that's how I like my kitchens to be exactly the same way. Like you can eat off of the floor at my Regatta de Buffalo, because I'm so proud of like every night they have a routine that they have to do. But I was trained the same way when I went to culinary school. And I forgot to mention that when I was going through culinary school, I also had multiple jobs at the same time. I actually worked at McDonald's. Can you believe that? But
No.
And so I learned a lot of the basics there of hygiene, and it really stuck with me to this day. Like I was responsible. They called it dive, and so you had to go in the sinks, and you had a 3-compartment sink, and you had to wash everything. Then you had to rinse it. Then you had to sanitize it, and then let it air dry. And while I was doing that, at the same time, I was going to culinary school, and I also worked at a fine dining restaurant. It was called Bistro Montparnasse in Portsmouth, and I didn't have a car at this time, and so I biked around the entire city of Portsmouth. So I was kind of I'd set myself up for working long hours anyway. You know, it was just kind of in my blood, I guess, at that point. You know, working multiple places. But just back to the hygiene thing, that's the reason why I wanted to bring it up, was because working for McDonald's, I think that they really do have some of the very highest hygiene standards that are out there. And I try to institute that in my guys, you know, like label and dating everything, you know, rotating your products out and stuff like that. So it is super important for sure.
Steve, do you have a signature dish or one that holds special meaning for you?
Yes, I think at my restaurant in Donnelly, regards to the buffalo, it's the slow braised beef bison short rib. It is amazing. It's really, really cool.
It's excellent.
And a lot of people don't realize this but my passion is truly seafood. Seafood is my specialty. I love cooking seafood. Like, you know, when I interview people a lot, I ask them, you know, well, what's your favorite station in the kitchen? What do you enjoy cooking the most? So most kitchens have three stations in the kitchen: grill, saute, and pantry, garde manger, we call it. And so the grill station obviously is mostly steaks, you know, some grilled fish occasionally on there. The saute station is, you know, very active. It's a lot of pan work, and, you know, it's the pasta station, for example. So you drop your pasta in, you're sauteing your scallops and your shrimp and all that stuff. And then the salad station is you know, where they're building all the salads, the desserts, that sort of stuff from there. My favorite station is the saute station, and I ask this question to every time I interview somebody. I'm like, you know, well, what is your favorite station? Because I want to know. It's like, well, I can do it all, but no, I want to know, like, what is your passion behind it? What station do you enjoy the most? And so that I love asking that question a lot to a lot of people. But that is my specialty, is seafood, because I love cooking seafood just perfectly. Like scallops is another one of my favorite dishes I love to cook.
Yeah, we were up deep sea fishing in Alaska a few years back, and just the king salmon and the shrimp, just you can taste the freshness, and I love great seafood. Steve, if you could cook a meal for anyone, past or present, who would it be, and what would you serve?
That's a great question. Well, I've cooked for quite a few celebrities. I've cooked for the Queen before, Queen Elizabeth.
No.
Yes, yep. I've actually done that. We did a big D-Day celebration in Portsmouth every year. There's the big celebration. It was the 50th anniversary of the D-Day celebration of when they went to Normandy in France. And so the Queen was there, President Clinton was there. There was all sorts of dignitaries from around the world, all the leaders from around the world. So that was a really, really special occasion. And we actually prepared all the food for that, and then we actually had to serve it as well. But we had to go through like all the FBI background checks, and there was dogs around, like, you know, sniffing all the drains, and so that was a really, really, really cool experience, and pretty up there as far as like who to cook for. But gosh, I would personally love to cook for a celebrity chef, like, you know, Gordon Ramsay, or, you know. I just would love to see them judge me kind of like where I am at, you know, and stuff like that. I think that would be kind of a really important one for me.
Yeah, cool. What's a misconception people have about being a professional chef, or misconceptions?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like, you know, you see all these celebrity chefs on TV and think how easy it is to be that role, you know, and how easy it is to be a chef. It's as we've explained during this podcast, it's not easy. It's really difficult. It's a long hours. It's grueling. You know, there's a lot of work involved in what we have to do. Like, you know, I'm in charge of, you know, hiring and firing everybody. I have to do all the ordering for all of the resort. You know, so it's a big job. There's a lot of challenges that come with it. You know, and so it's definitely not easy. It's but it, you know, there has its rewards as well. You know.
Yeah. Steve, if you weren't a chef, what do you think you'd be doing other than a colorblind pilot?
Well, that's exactly. I was going to go right there. That's a tough one. Maybe, gosh, it's going to take some more time to think about that one.
That's okay. But you wanted to be a pilot. That didn't work out. And now you're just really into being a chef and creating these incredible experiences and working with some great team members. Final thoughts. What's next for you? Any upcoming projects or goals you're excited about? You know, many of these incredible chefs, from Ramsay to the Spanish gentleman, I can't recall his name, who is just an incredible chef, but is now, you know, working in these, you know, disaster areas. What's his name?
Jose Andres.
Andres. They're branching out into media, TV shows. What's next for you? Any upcoming projects or goals you're excited about?
Yeah, no, I'm always, I'm always thinking. I'm always, wondering what's out there next for me and stuff like that. I've got another idea or two in my head for another restaurant or two, possibly down the road. I think that those are exciting for me. I like to keep myself challenged, and I think that those keeps you fresh for sure.
Excellent. Steve, what's the best piece of a career advice you've ever received?
Just dedication to the job, always willing to be there, willing to step above. And, I think you have to give it everything you've got, this is, it's not an easy task,
Yeah, yeah. Steve, lastly, this will be the last question before we get into the rapid fire round.
Okay.
If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice about food, cooking, or life in general, what would it be?
I think when you're cooking at home, don't overthink it. Keep it simple. I have a rule when I write a menu. Basically I try to keep it at 5 ingredients. You've got your main ingredients. So say it's Chilean sea bass, for example. You don't want to overpower it with too many sauces and too many accompaniments. Let the star of the show shine. With like a little bit of citrus and with some sort of starch that's kind of too many people put in. When you look at the menu and there's so many ingredients in it, like it really complicates the dish. And I'm like, well, why would you do that for? So I think keep it really simple. Don't estimate what you can do. If you're doing a dinner party, plan it all out. You want to make sure you write yourself a prep list. It's really important to write down everything you want to do for the day. And you can prepare some items the day before to get ahead of the game, and then when you have people come over, then all you have to do is just do finishing touches to the dishes.
Excellent. Okay. I've been waiting long for this. Rapid fire round. One word response or short phrase. You ready, Steve?
Yeah, let's do it.
Sweet or savory?
Sweet.
Favorite midnight snack?
Ice cream.
One ingredient you can't live without?
Tomatoes.
Gordon Ramsay or Anthony Bourdain?
Gordon Ramsay.
Biggest pet peeve in the kitchen?
Untidiness.
A food trend you love?
Sous vide.
Sous vide. A food trend you wish would go away?
Ooh. That's a tough one. Too many.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Favorite guilty pleasure? Fast food or something else?
Yeah, I'm guilty. I do like fast food occasionally, Yeah, I think fast food is definitely probably my guilty pleasure.
Have you ever had In-N-Out Burger?
Not very often, no, because unfortunately I've mostly been a West Coast company, but I know they've opened up a couple of restaurants in Idaho now.
2 in Boise, and
Right.
we've been.
I need to check it out for sure, and I've heard really good things about it. So
Yeah, that's one of my guilty pleasures.
Nice.
If you had to eat one dish for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ooh, that's another tough one, I think it would have to be seafood. Like I said, I just love seafood,
Cool. Wine or whiskey?
Wine.
What's one kitchen tool every home cook should own?
Can opener.
Steve, if you could have dinner with any chef, past or present, who would it be and why?
Eric Ripper. I'd love to sit down with him. And
Excellent.
Just his passion and dedication, it's just he's a real mentor for sure.
Great. Steve, if our listeners want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you or visit some of your restaurants?
Yeah, no, it's really simple. Actually, we have a really easy website. It's cheftopple.com, which is my 2 restaurants in Donnelly. And then we're up at Tamarack as well, so tamarackidaho.com. There's another one, and you can see the restaurants up there. Or I'm on Facebook as well, and Instagram, and also on LinkedIn. I have a pretty nice profile on LinkedIn as well.
And that's CHEFTOPPLE.com, cheftopple.com. Where did this hour go, Chef? It's been incredible to learn more about you and see the genius behind all these incredible dishes and commitment to excellence. Thank you for what you've done at your restaurants, also here at Tamarack Resort. Thank you, Mission Possible Podcast Nation. Check us out at missionpossible.biz. Thanks for your time, and carpe diem.